Hey everyone, Mike Nicholas here. Welcome back to the Soul Unleashed podcast, audio and video. Today I'm really happy to have as my guest Monica Morrissey. And Monica is from Vermont, where they already have snow. And Monica, I'm just going to ask you, just to get started, please. First of all, the folks that you'll be talking to on this podcast are mostly skeptics, uh, like me, who years ago I would have thought you were a complete crackpot. But I don't think that anymore. And I'm happy to have you share with us today. But please tell us what it is now that you do, and then we'll get into how you got started doing it.
Yeah, so I have a business called Intuitive Wellness that has many avenues, but I write about signs of the afterlife. I've written 3 books. I also have a card deck that's called Heaven's Messages, and I also have a grief journal, and I teach Reiki. And my business is focused on our energetic system and understanding that in a different way. And
Well,
I believe we're so sorry. One more
it's
thing.
okay. It's okay.
Um, I believe that we're a soul with a body, not a body with a soul. And so I do a lot of soul care. I know that there's everything's about self care, but I want to tap into everybody's soul.
Awesome. So tell us how you got started. First of all, I know that you're an author, right? You've written, what, 3 books now?
Correct.
Okay. So we'll talk about those in just a little bit, especially your latest book, which from when I read about it, I saw your trailer on YouTube, which is really well done. But
Thank
tell
you.
us how you got started doing this.
Well, originally I started kind of diving into this world in 2008 when I lost my nephew. He was only 21 years old and he got into a bad car crash and died instantly. And I was trying to help my kids through this and just not understanding it. And a colleague suggested that I read this book called Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss. And it sent me on this journey of like understanding life at a whole different level. But I was really secret about it because I worked in public education and I didn't want anybody to know that like I was like, oh, could we have like past lives where, we were, a different person and all these new things that I had never been exposed to. And so that sent me on a journey of understanding. And it was almost like I was preparing for my parents' death. And my parents died about 8 months apart. My mother died on New Year's Eve, 2014/2015. And then I took care of my dad, and 8 months later he passed away. After he passed away, because I knew this information, but I hadn't really put it to use. Like I could understand it on a brain like understanding, like, okay, could this really be possible? But I was also a math teacher. So I loved things that were concrete and explainable, and 5 plus 4 always equaled 9. And it made me feel safe to like have those answers and that security and not be like this, like, oh, could this really happen? Or could I make connection with my parents even though they're no longer here? Like all that kind of seemed kind of like far fetched to me, even though I had been reading about it for years. So,
So if I can just chip in real quick. So your nephew passed away in 2008, and so you read about these things. I'm familiar with the book, of course. You read about these things for 7 years, and then you started to kind of put that into practice.
yeah, so I went secretly again to see mediums and be like, okay, is this stuff really happening? Like, I didn't even tell my husband where I was going. I'm like, I'm going out with the girls. See you later. And like, I did like all this kind of like secret studying because I was also a public educator. So I don't
Hmm.
want to, bring this into
Sure.
my classroom. But then the things that happened after my dad died were just like, I wasn't even really like trying. Like I wasn't trying to connect with him. Like I could feel him, like I felt his love near me, but I really wasn't trying. And then some things happened and
Yeah. So
mine
tell
were,
us what happened.
yeah. So, well, the first thing, so I always hike this mountain. We have beautiful green mountains here in Vermont. I always hike this mountain and there's a lake at the bottom of the mountain. And it's my parents had a family camp on the lake. So we grew up there. Every summer we spent there. And so a week after he passed, I hiked the mountain because I always hiked the mountain. And when I got to a certain spot on the mountain, I'd always call him. The last summer when I was caretaking for him, we had 24/7 care. And I always called him when I got to the top of the mountain. And I said, "Hey, Dad, I'll be down for coffee." And I'd go and I'd check in on him because at that point I was still a teacher and not an administrator. So I had my summers off. So caretaking for him. So the first week after he passed, I'm like, what am I going to do when I get to the top of the mountain? Like, I can't call my dad. I always called him. So I get there, and there's this other family kind of milling around, two couples, a couple, and then it looked like their parents. And I was bawling and crying, and I was like, "I'm so sorry, I'm ruining your hike." Like, I could have just sat there and cried. Like, why did I have to like reach out to these people that I didn't know? And I said, "My dad just died. I'm just really struggling." And I just shared, right? Like, and so they all gave me a hug. I was sweaty and gross, but they all were like, "Let me give you a hug." I'm like, sure. So I took 4 hugs from 4 strangers. And then the younger gentleman came over to me and he said, "Can I ask you a question?" And I was like, sure. I don't know. Like, what's he going to say? Right. And he's like, "Do you have faith?" And I was just like, oh, it just crumbled up there on that mountain. And I was like, yes, you have no idea how much faith I have. Like, that has always been a part of me. Um, and he said, "Well, I'm a minister. Could we say a prayer from your dad?" Now, to back up, I had told my dad that there was a spirit communication system. This is after he had had a stroke, so he couldn't talk, but I knew he was listening. And I told him that I could call him anytime and he could call me, and it was like be like a telephone, right? So I was like, "This is the telephone call from my dad.
You
How?"
meant after he passed, you told him that would happen. Okay.
Yeah, like I told him it was like a telephone, but it was different. It was invisible. And, some people believed it and some people didn't. But I believed that he was still going to be able to contact me. So I got my phone call, right? I'm happy. Like, I was just like, that's the connection I needed that day. But a week later, I go to climb the mountain again. So this is my way of dealing with stress, right? Like, moving my body is part of the grief journey. And I share that in my vlog this week. So I'm like, I'm not expecting anything because I got my phone call. I was very happy. Guess what I found? So back up again. While I was taking care of my dad, one day, one Saturday afternoon, he said, "So your mom and I hid this coin collection. I think I know where it is. Let's go find it." And I was like, "Okay, let's go find it." So the joke there is that I found 2 sex ed books on top of the coin collection. And I thought that they were my parents. Come to find out they were my grandmothers from 1940. So we had a good chuckle. Anyway, we found the coins. We had, this laugh with my dad. And I started sorting the coins. And I started seeing patterns. He had 4 kids and 12, I think 12 grandchildren. And or maybe 8 grandchildren. I can't remember right now off the top of my head. Anyway, and I started putting them in piles and saying, well, 4 here and 8 here and 12 here and different things. And one day he woke up from his nap and he said, "Hey, you know those dimes? They're Liberty Head dimes." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." And he says, "Could we have those made into necklaces?" I'm like, "Sure. Yep, we can do that." And so everybody got a necklace with their dime on it, and that's from the early 1900s. And then everybody got like a certain coin collection, so they got different quarters and different things, some Canadian money that his family was from Canada. So anyway, so I had this conversation with my dad. One of the last times I could talk to him, I was bringing him from the camp back to home because we knew he was declining. And I had this conversation with him about the furniture in his house and how I wanted him to pick which furniture everybody would get. And he says, no, no. just whatever. And I said, no, Dad, like a bureau is a bureau, but a bureau from your grandfather is a bureau. Like it really means something. And then I said to him, a dime, Dad, is just a dime. But when it's a dime from your dad or your grandfather, it's a dime, right? And so little did I know how much fun he was going to have with these dimes afterwards. So, can you guess what I found in the exact spot that I would sit and call my dad on that mountain?
Guessing, of course, it was a dime.
It's a dime, but it
Was
wasn't.
it a Liberty Head dime, or
It
what kind
was
of dime?
not. It was not a Liberty Head dime. It was a dime. Um, and it just sent me on this journey, like, and then I started sharing this story with some people, and they're like, "Oh, I've always wanted to believe in this stuff." But now, now it kind of gave them the connection, like, oh, if she can do it, I can do it. And if it's normalized and if it's okay to think this, then, so I started sharing. But I'm not going to give the ending of my first book, because the endings of all my books are just like, whew, like mind blowing. Like, and so it wasn't that dime that sent me on a journey to write. I was really sick. And somebody said writing was therapeutic, and I just rolled my eyes. So 2 years later, there was another dime that I'm not telling, but somebody said writing was therapeutic. And I rolled my eyes and I put pen to paper, and I was just kind of like, this isn't going to help me. I need a pill to fix me. I need something to heal me, right? And out popped a book. Like, I just had no plans of writing. I actually hated to write. Math, again, was my security, and I flunked a writing exam in college, and I wasn't interested in writing whatsoever.
How did you
So
publish it?
I did it through Balboa Press, which I ended up pulling it back, and just I self-published it myself and worked through all of the hoops through
Oh,
Ingram Sparks and um,
I
yeah.
appreciate how difficult that is, because I'm going through the publishing journey now myself, for
Mhm.
my own book, and so I'm in the editing phase with the editors. But I understand how difficult that can be. So that's very impressive to do it by
Well,
yourself.
and the part of it is control. So like I
Sure.
didn't want somebody to tell me how to write, because that happened to me in school. And my writing style is different. And, maybe it's not a traditional publishing book, but people have enjoyed it and found, their own way with it. So there's this part of me that, like, I just couldn't jump through all the hoops for, a traditional publisher. So I just had to do it my way and be
So were you
okay with
still a
it.
math teacher during this time?
Um, let's see, not when I wrote my book, but I was a curriculum director, which is an administrator that works closely with superintendent. So I had 7 schools that I was working for, and I'm also a professor at college. So, like, there's this, again, this side me. I was very fearful to
Hmm.
come out with my first book, because, I'm sharing about all these connections to the spiritual world, and what are my colleagues going to think of me, all those things, because I had this persona over here. So it was a slow transition to what I do now. um, it's I think I wrote my book in 2018 and published it in 2019, and thought that was it. And then immediately after people read it, they're like, when's your next book coming out? And I was like, wait a minute, what? Like, I wasn't expecting it. So my second book is actually, might be interesting to you, is my journey to self-publishing. So it's called More Dimes from Heaven, and it's my journey, and it helps the next person who wants to write a book. But it also shows, like, once I put pen to paper, all this weird stuff started happening in my life. Like, I can't even describe how many signs I got from spirit that was like helping me write that book. And so I kept track of them. Like, for instance, I go to do business cards, and I have like several different places around me that I live, and I could have ordered them online too, but I decided to do like a local store, and I was like, okay, I want to support this store. And I walk in and they said, "Are you writing a book?" And I said, "Yeah." And they're like, "Is it about dimes?" And I was like, yeah, dimes from heaven. And they were like, that's kind of weird because we have a dime glued to the floor over here. And I was like, what? The business that I choose has a dime glued to the floor. Why? And it was a joke on the employee who kept dropping all their coins because they had holes in their pocket. There was this whole story, but I was just like, there's my dad saying, good job. Right? And I can't make this stuff up. They keep coming.
So, Monica, how did you go from this journey from the dimes to, and I don't know if I've shared with you, I don't think I have, but we lost our son 3 years ago, 2020. And so I'm more familiar than I want to be about the grief process. But how did you go from that spot in your life to the past life regression and really what's, like a master course or a doctorate course in spiritual connection, versus finding dimes? I have a lot of friends and relatives that believe in finding coins, that their 2 pennies means it's from their father, or, there's a number of people that I know, relatives especially, that believe those are signs from their deceased ones. But how did you get to where you are now, which seems like a long leap from that?
Well, I like to say that I'm mixing my public education training with the spiritual world. So, if you saw the bookcases, I don't have them behind me, but I am an avid reader. I can read 3 to 4 books in a week. And so all this stuff is in here, and now it's ready to come out and help other people. So, um, I did a lot of online trainings. I'm just curious. And I just started being more curious and more curious. And so I'm also a health and life coach, and I do EFT. I just kind of started following the breadcrumbs that lit me up.
What's
And
EFT?
so, what's up?
I'm sorry, what's EFT?
Oh, emotional freedom technique.
Okay.
So, after my nephew passed away, I did start doing past life work and also EFT work myself to heal myself, because I also knew, and not that I'll always be fully healed, but I knew that part of the inner work was to heal myself. And so by writing, that's what started my healing journey too. And yeah, so I'm just kind of following those breadcrumbs, and also watching the universe unfold and listening to the messages. And my third book, Once Upon a Dime, is filled with stories that I can't make this up, where somebody would reach out to me about something, and I would have a coincidence happen at that exact same moment. And that's what the story is filled with. It's not just filled with my dime stories, it's filled with all these other people who are experiencing this. So all, from around the area that I live in. Yeah. And I just follow the breadcrumbs, is what I say. What are you curious about?
So how would you teach somebody or tell somebody, folks that are listening to this, that believe that finding coins or certain things are from their relatives or their loved ones who have passed? How do you reassure them that that's the case?
Um, so again, I was a non-believer, totally didn't want to, I don't know, if somebody saw a butterfly in the summertime, I see 1,000 butterflies, but it's that intention. And so because my dad had showed up for a dime with a dime, then that, helped my intention. So you can try an experiment. And this is what I encourage in my last book. I give you the directions to test this out yourself. And you're going to hear other people who tested this. And so for me, it's more about the feeling part of it. And it's tuning into that love, because I really feel that grief is about love. And so if that love continues on after someone passes, then how can you keep that relationship alive, and how can you keep it going? So I'm going to give another example other than dimes to show this. So I am journeying through some grief right now with my brother. And I was like, my connection with my dad was very strong. My mom shows herself in pennies because she was a penny pincher. And so, like, that's kind of my little joke. But as soon as she passed away, boom, the pennies started rolling in. And I was just like, okay, I really think that this is my mom. So my brother passed of alcoholism. His liver finally gave out. And I was processing my grief and went for a walk in the woods and was like, And I just kind of felt it and sunk into it. And I was like, I wonder if my brother's going to show me a sign in a different way. Like I hadn't tuned into like what would be the sign for my brother. Because, it's not going to be a dime. That's always my dad. It's not going to be a penny. It's always my mom. Like, how is my brother going to show himself? And so I immediately like had that thought. And I kid you not. So we've had a bunch of snowstorms up here in Vermont. Every Monday's been a snowstorm for 3 Mondays. We feel like we're doing Groundhog Day. So we have this heavy, wet snow on the trees, right? So there was this branch that was in my way. And so I had to kind of duck like this. And I kid you not, a big chunk of snow hit my head right here. And instantly I was like, my brother just pegged a snowball at me. I know he did. That is so him. And I could hear his laugh. He was just laughing hysterically at me. Like, you wanted a sign? Here you go. And it was like that instantaneous process. And so, like, I mean, I got like tingles just, feeling this. So I decided to have a little bit of fun with him on his way to the service. And I shared this at the service, but I was just like, I'm going to stay in tune with his sense of humor. I need some humor in my life. I'm going to remember to embrace his legacy. He was always picking on me. He was my older brother. He was always picking on me, right? So I can remember, and that's what grief does, right? It brings back all the good memories. So I really honored my brother for who he was before the disease got him. Just to be clear, we had a great celebration and really thought about who he was before the addiction got to him. But since the snowball, I was like, I remember as a kid always fighting through that front seat. Of course, there was no seat belts. I'm that old. And we were always fighting for that front seat. So I took his box of ashes. I'm like, you're riding in the back, dude. And I just had that like sense of lightness about me and just feeling his love. So like you can believe or you don't have to believe, but that belief is what's healing my heart and making me feel better and tuning into that love versus the anger or the depression or you do miss them. I'm not saying that we don't miss them. And, like I said before, like I miss that relationship that I could have had if he hadn't, been the person that he was.
So I guess it appears obvious a little bit, but what would you tell people? What's the reason for the signs? Why
Mhm.
why does your dad leave a dime? Why does my relative leave 2 pennies or whatever? What's the reason for that?
I think that it's to help us understand this world in a very different way and to stay connected to them and to know that they're here to support us for the rest of our lives. Um, it reminds me of their legacy, like who they were, and how do I embody that in my life? And so that's what I like to do. Every time I get a sign, I'm kind of tuning into, okay, what's going on in my life that I could use piece of my dad. And he had his own business. So like I think about him and my business, like what would my dad do and how would he support me in this world? But I just think that we're getting too bogged down in our thoughts
Hmm.
and how our brains work and opening up to that spiritual connection.
Have you been able to communicate with your father or your brother through a medium, where you received any type of validation of those signs?
Yes. So this is a funny story. So Rebecca Ann Cicero, who does Messages from Heaven, and she works for the Forever Family Foundation. I'm very connected to her, and that's who I learned a lot from. But right after my dad passed, before I wrote my book, I was sitting in the front seat with my dime necklace. I'm sorry, I'm not wearing it right now. My dime necklace on, and she was doing a reading of somebody else across the room. And then all of a sudden she kind of comes back to the front of the stage, and I'm right in the front row. And she was like, a dime a dozen, a dime a dozen. And I was just like, I kind of held my, my necklace out. She comes over to me and she's like, is that an effing dime? And I was like, mm-hmm. And my dad came through so strong. And the messages were just spot on. He had rose colored glasses. The three kept coming up. Well, we have three girls in our family. We have, and then he was like, oh, the three kept coming up like, oh, he has three properties. He's so proud of his real estate. I'm like, mm-hmm. And then, she's like, wait, did he go into the service? And I'm like, well, that's a long story, but yes, he did, like, so all of these validations started coming through, and I went to several of her events, and he kept coming through. Like, it was like, boom, boom, boom. Like, okay. It was almost like, okay, you want to open up the spiritual door? Well, let's shine on you. And so that then I could learn them at a deep level of my own stuff. And then I can move forward. So the recommendation, as far as my brother coming through, I mean, I feel him, but I also know, and this is Rebecca, and I'm sure there's lots of different views, but she suggests 6 months to try to process it ourselves
Mhm.
first, and they're adjusting to their new spirit world. So I have not done anything with my brother yet.
Have you developed your own ability to do anything close to mediumship, or how does that work?
Yeah, so I rely on cards. So I have a Heaven's Messages, and I also have the Talking to Heaven with James Van Prague. I've had quite a few good hits. I don't consider myself, a professional, because I just haven't been to enough trainings to really get in touch with that. But I think that we all have this ability. And I know that I had this ability when I was young, because I remember talking to entities and these floating balls outside of my window. I remember talking to them. So I know that that's a part of me. And what's funny is the times that, like, I don't share with a client. So a lot of times when I'm doing Reiki on a client, I can kind of tune into this, and I can get those messages that help the person. But the times that I don't share it, they come out and say, like, oh yeah, my grandfather, I think, was here during this Reiki session. I was like, oh, like, I knew that, but I didn't share it because it's that, uh, like scared, fear factor, right?
Mhm.
So I'm working on it, and, I don't think that I'm perfect yet, but I am getting a lot of hits.
But you do think that other people can develop the same ability to communicate, like when you communicate or you connect, do you hear or feel, or is it both kind of things?
Um, so I've really gotten in touch with my intuition. So my intuition is very heart centered, and so that's where I feel it, and I also hear it. But I also know that the messages come from a certain angle. So mine come what I call a 45-degree angle to my right side, and
Mhm.
that's how I know that the message isn't mine. But it also takes a lot of practice of quieting the mind. So meditation practices daily. Like, you have to be in tune with that quiet part of you, rather than that busy, oh, I got a grocery list, or I got to go pay this bill, and all that stuff, all that
Mhm.
human stuff. We have to kind of shut down. We have to be out in nature. We have to do all those things on a regular basis, because I do feel like that's part of the work.
And how did the cards work that you do?
Mm.
Do you do those remotely for people like we're talking right now?
Yeah, I do them remotely. I do them in person. I have several different decks. Um, they're very they're just so powerful, and they just bring out whatever that person needs at the time.
How are you inspired to create those?
Yeah, well, man, you just want to get the waterworks going today, huh? So this spring, when I wrote the card deck, um, I had one of my students who passed away. He was a twin, and he passed away suddenly. And I was grieving, and I sat down, and I was pretty close to this family. So, like in my teaching career, I just loved people, and I just loved families, and I lived in my community that I taught, and my kids grew up, and I was just a really
Mm.
part of it. And my kids used to play with these kids. And so, anyway, I sat down and thought, what, I have been in this work for so long, right? And dealt in reading all these books and understanding this at a very deep level. And I sat down and I wrote down, what would I want that family to know? And what would I want the messages from heaven to be? And so I just sat down and wrote it one weekend and just sat by myself and just like processed all this stuff and just put it into a card deck so that if that family chose, that they could, draw a card and get a message from their son. Because I just think that losing your child, and I tried to think of that too when, I lost my brother, is that he was my parents' child. And so I tried to remember that parent energy of how much unconditional love we have for our children. And so how would I want them or anybody, connected to him, how would I want them to understand heaven in a different way than how society or how religion explains it? And so that's how those card decks. I never planned on writing a card deck. I never planned on writing a book, but these things have inspired me.
So since you just mentioned it there, what does happen when we die?
Well, I believe that our consciousness continues and that we are just not in the physical form, that we are invisible, but you can feel it or see it or hear it, or depending on your different senses, your spiritual senses, and how that they're working. So I think that they're right here. We just can't see them.
Do does our consciousness go someplace else? Like, is there a heaven or is there a hell, or what happens?
I don't believe in the hell version that has been created, because I think that that was created to try to control people and keep them, it like trying to behave. So
Hmm.
I protect myself. I put up a boundary and say I'm not engaging in that. Um, I believe heaven is right here on earth. That we have to experience heaven within our hearts right now, just by appreciating everything around us that we have with gratitude, and that our ancestors and everybody are actually right here with us. And again, we just can't see them. If you look at like pictures with orbs, or I've seen picture videos of like dogs barking at this like light that's kind of going around. And, that could be an entity. And I don't mean in a ghost way. Some people get very confused from the movies and saying, like, oh, this is a ghost haunting me. No, that's only a ghost haunting you if that's what you believe. But what if it was just somebody that you love, and they're here to show you support? And that's a much better way to live my life than that fear factor and turning away from this spiritual world, which is what I used to do.
So if you've read Many Lives, Many Masters, then do you believe that we do come back many, 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 many times?
Yes, I do. I've healed myself through many past life regressions myself, and that's what encouraged me when I saw the deep healing that I was able to go through and move through by understanding. And it's not about like the scene in the past life, it's about the patterns my soul is trying to get a hold to try to get my attention. So my soul is here to learn a lesson, right? And learn, well, many lessons. And so I just want to help my soul evolve and grow. And that's what this work is all about. I also do dream analysis because I think dreams are from your soul. And again, it's not like the past life. I mean, it's similar to the past life where dreams, what you're seeing in the scene isn't the important part. It's what those things symbolize. I use Jungian theory to help with this. But that and the past life is just soul messages.
What if you can never remember your dreams?
You can ask before you go to sleep. You can put a little piece of paper underneath your pillow and say, I want to remember my dream. Um, and then also keep a pen and paper next to your bed because you want to write it before you actually like awake and go to the bathroom or something or go get your coffee. You want to write it right then, and then you'll be more apt to remember them.
Okay.
Also, Reiki helps. Like I teach Reiki. And so a lot of my Reiki students, once they turn on that Reiki energy, all of a sudden they're having all these dreams. And so that's part of the Reiki classes is like, send me your dream. And then I'll analyze it for you. And then we'll figure out what your soul wants you to know.
Monica, can you? We're gonna have to start wrapping this up a little bit because I've just found people won't listen much beyond 30 some minutes.
Yeah.
Can you just tell me the names of your three books again, and I'll put all those links in the show notes just
Yeah.
so people can hear it.
Yeah. So my first book is Dimes from Heaven: How Coins and Coincidences Help Me Discover My Life as an Empath. So again, it's about my dimes, but it also gives you health and wellness tips that I learned about being a sensitive person. And that's what I discovered when I was writing. I was like, oh, dang, I think I'm really super sensitive. Everybody else saw it, but I didn't want to admit it. So really embracing who I am. My second book is More Dimes from Heaven: A Journey to Self-Publishing. And again, it's about my writing journey and all the crazy stuff that started happening around me, and also gives you the tools to write your own book because I want you to share your story. My third book is called Once Upon a Dime, and Heaven is Talking to Us. Do you know how to listen? It's all the secret tips and understanding a little bit about grief too in the beginning, and then also just this understanding of how this spiritual dimension works. So giving you the tools so that you can kind of be your own medium and that you can test this work out yourself.
Okay, perfect. And I assume they're all available on Amazon, right?
Yep, and they're
Okay,
also they're on audio, Kindle, and paperback. And I actually have a paperback and Kindle with all three books in one.
super. Did you record them yourself?
I did because
Good for you.
it's the teacher in me. I have to I have to share my own story. Somebody else did it. They wouldn't, talk it the way that I would. So,
Yeah, awesome. So before we wrap up here, as you're approaching the interview, there's probably some things that you wanted to make sure that you covered, right? And so I just want to give you an opportunity to, is there anything that you want to convey that, or you were moved to convey or talk about that you didn't cover?
um I could talk for hours about anything. So,
Well,
uh,
after I read your books, I'll probably ask you to talk again. So,
oh, I would love that. I think that the biggest thing is if you're doubting this, um, read the book WTF Just Happened by Liz Enton. I don't know if you've heard of this book yet, but she's from
I'm
the
not.
Connecticut area, and she was a sciencey skeptic. And she dove into the science behind it. So if you want to know more of the science, Liz is your gal because she tested it. She would sign up for mediums and be like, I'm not going to give them my credit card. I'm not going to give them my real name. Like she did all these things to try to hide her identity. And then these mediums, like, could read her, and she was just like, what's going on? So she just wrote a really great book, and she continues her journey in this world. So
How
I
do you
would
spell her last name?
ENT, and I want to say ON, but
Enton?
Enton.
Okay.
WTF just happened.
There can't be
And
too many books out there with that title, so
yeah,
I'll find it. Okay.
it was
Well,
great to talk
awesome.
to you, Mike.
Thank you, Monica. I really appreciate your time, and I can't even remember how we met, but I don't worry about those kind of things because it's supposed to happen. So I really enjoy talking to you, and we'll talk again.
Yeah, so the soul unleashed. Let's unleash everybody's soul and let them be who they're supposed to be.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Bye
Okay,
bye.
bye-bye.